Hi guys, James Wilson Taylor here for Rock Sound. It's another of our video calls. We've been chatting with everybody while we're all at home in the minute, and I am delighted to say from iDKHOW, Mr. Dallon Weekes is on the line. How are you, man?
Good. How are you doing?
Not too bad, not too bad. It's very nice to see you. Nice to be able to catch up in this way, albeit from afar. And I will start this off in the same way we've started these off with everybody, which is just to say, I hope you and the family and all your loved ones, you're keeping safe, you're keeping well in this rather strange few months we've been having. How generally has your lockdown been going for you? How you been occupying your time?
Well, I appreciate the sentiment. We're trying our best to stay safe here. Kids are doing school from home and on the computers and stuff. And my wife is a real champion when it comes to that stuff, keeping them on task. And I'm not as good at it as she is. Anytime she has an appointment or something in the morning and I'm in charge of that, I always blow it. Like I'm late or something and I have to apologize to their teachers, but she's great.
Yeah, keeping things ticking over. That's the main thing. As long as it gets done, it's all fine.
Yeah.
That's the way forward. Absolutely. That's a very important part right there. How's the communication been on band stuff as well? That's been the interesting thing when we've seen chat with a lot of bands where members are spread out all across the country. I guess I can't remember where Ryan's based these days. How difficult's that been in terms of communicating that?
It's pretty easy. With the state of how we communicate now, Ryan's based in LA and I'm in Salt Lake City. And, anytime we need to talk, it's just text messages and phone calls and emails and all your standard stuff. But we're taking care of business with our team, slowly releasing this record bit by bit, trying to, stretch it out over the course of however long we can, just because touring isn't a thing right now. So that's kind of a new and interesting thing. Interesting being a kind word.
Yeah, interesting. We'll go with that, definitely. That's the way to word it, I'm sure. But let's talk about this album, man. Let's get into it. I've heard it. I really, really like it. Let's start with that. I'm a big fan of this album. Congratulations to you guys on putting this together, really. I guess a good place to start would be when a lot of these songs came together. We've chatted a lot over the last couple of years when you've been touring and stuff. You had the EP out. I guess there's always a temptation when you've had an EP out with some singles there to maybe include some of those. But what's great about this is it's a new collection of songs where really only a handful have been heard, either live or from previous stuff or whatever. So when did these newer songs actually come to pass? Did you have time at the beginning of the year, or was this while you were still on the road?
Well, weirdly enough, the vast majority of this record has been written for a really long time. And the EP songs that you're talking about were always meant to be part of this record. All of it was meant to be together originally when Ryan and I got started. But the way that things rolled out, we found ourselves playing catch up a little bit to the fans that were coming in and to the labels that came around knocking on our door. We ended up going with Fearless Records because they offered us 100% creative control on everything, and they were the only label to do that. So that recording process and that album process got interrupted a little bit in favor of touring and promoting what we had laid down already. And so we kind of had to make that trade-off in order to build the band a little bit more. But we finally got the opportunity to record this record after what seemed like an eternity. But the good part about that is the time between EP and album, we were able to write a couple more songs and to fine-tune some ideas a little bit more. So it's a bit of a trade-off, but glad to be where we're at now. Glad how the record turned out and that we're finally able to start rolling it out. It's a huge relief.
Yeah, no, I can imagine, especially if you had the music for that length of time. I was going to ask, in terms of things you tweaked and little things being added in there, what were those learnings from putting out the EP that have then fed into what people are going to hear as the final product of Razzmatazz?
Well, with the EP, everything was so new still. I think it took a minute for me to sort of find myself again, find my own voice and find myself within the role of being a frontman and a singer, because that was never on my bucket list. It's, not something I ever had as a goal to have my own band or to be a frontman or a singer or anything. It was just the only way that I could get my songs made. So everything that we've done so far has been sort of born out of necessity. Us performing as a two-piece, it was because we were both employed with other bands at the time, so made scheduling, our secret shows a lot easier. And it made things a lot simpler, and it seemed to work well. So we just kept doing it that way. But it's been a big learning curve. I feel like I've sidetracked a little bit from your question, so forgive me for that. But yeah.
It's about the learning of that time, though. I think that is the interesting thing. You know, it is kind of a rare position that you guys, perhaps because of the way you rolled it out, and it was this secretive thing that just built and built and built, you then had these opportunities around an EP to play these kind of shows and actually kind of build that audience probably a bit quicker than you perhaps expected, maybe. But that's got to be a rare situation and kind of interesting to then feed into making a debut.
I mean, yeah, that's what I mean when I say we found ourselves sort of playing catch up, because we had our own timeline when we started, you know, our own plan for releasing things. And, you know, the first year or so that we did this, it was in secret, and we just flat out denied that we even existed at all. And that doing it that way allowed us to sort of, you know, circumvent the whole formerly of title, you know, find ourselves playing for rooms full of strangers that didn't know or didn't care what bands we came from. And it allowed us to find our own roles within this new thing without, you know, cell phones constantly recording our every move, you know, because it was a learning process, because for a long time we had both been sort of relegated to these very specific roles where you can't do this and you can't do that and you can't do this. And with this band, suddenly there's no rules anymore. So we found ourselves trying things as we moved forward, and some of them worked and some of them didn't. And the things that did work, we held on to, and, you know, they sort of sparked something with us, and, you know, allowed us to maybe find ourselves is a big word for that, but maybe sort of remember how to do those roles, or remember ourselves a little bit more.
Yeah, I guess it's got to bring you a certain level of confidence as well to know that the audience was there and they found it, even just from the few songs that have been out already. They found it, they took it for what it was, you know, without even knowing necessarily a lot of these new fans about the other work you guys had done in other groups. This was about these songs, and they've built that kind of fan community already. That's got to be great, knowing you've got that before this album comes out.
I mean, well, that was really important for us, because we knew that, you know, it would be really easy to come out the gate waving a big flag saying formerly of, you know, it's been done before. Plenty of artists have left successful bands either to do a side project or to go on solo careers, and it doesn't always work out. And we've sort of, you know, studied people who have done this before, and what worked for them and what didn't work for them. And what I came to the realization that you can't make people care about what you're doing. You know, there's no brand loyalty within rock and roll. So the best way for us to build this thing would be from the ground up, just like any other band would, as best as we could, because we knew that once word did start getting out, and once we did start admitting that this was a real thing, that there would be plenty of people that would give us a chance just because of that fact. But interestingly enough, I've found that there are just as many people who won't give us a chance for the exact same reason. So it is this weird double-sided coin, you know?
Yeah, that is interesting, actually. But I guess, again, it just means that all power to the community that has been built around these actual songs you guys have put out, and leads us on very nicely to this record, which I think is going to go down a storm with those fans, because it is a perfect continuation of that EP in my mind. I think it works really well, and I want to dive into certain songs, primarily ones that people haven't heard yet, actually. And I'll start with From The Gallows, because I know when we've talked before, you pointed to that one as being one you could not wait to finally record and finally get it in the final version you wanted to get out to the people. Why does that one for you stand out as one you were particularly excited about?
I think it was because initially it was so different from anything else that I had done musically before. The demo for it was this very like 1930s jazzy barbershop quartet Ink Spots sort of song. Once we took it to the studio, it evolved a little bit and ended up turning into Lawrence Welk on acid. I don't know if you have Lawrence Welk in the UK, but it's this old
I
show.
know it through an SNL reference. That's how I know that.
Yeah. I think most people do, but like my dad would watch it because it was a show that was on TV when he was a kid. So he would watch it as this bit of nostalgia on the weekends when I was small. and that's how I became aware of it. But Lawrence Welk was this old fella, an immigrant who would play pop music from the 30s and 40s on TV in the 1970s for an audience that were mostly in their 60s and 70s. So it was very, very mellow, extremely Caucasian, and in the most charming way possible, I would have to say. But it's a very, very innocent show. But the song From The Gallows, which is kind of dark lyrically, we sort of took it to that place sonically, and I guess dropped a little bit of weirdness in the final product. I really love how it came out.
Yeah, it came out so great, man. And what's interesting, actually, an influence you didn't mention there that immediately struck me. I know you've talked in the past about how much you, of course, love the work of Queen, and you know you got to meet those guys sometimes and stuff, and like it's a real influence. I hadn't necessarily heard their musical influence on your stuff so far, but the production and the gang vocals on this—that is pure in the best possible way. That's pure Queen. They must have been an influence on this as well, right?
Well, absolutely. I would say it's a mixture of Queen and Sparks, because I think Sparks did it first. I mean, Queen, you know, there's no taking away from their accomplishments as a band, but they definitely took a page out of the Sparks handbook. If you go back and listen to some of Sparks' early stuff from like the early 70s. And, you know, so that influence is definitely taken a little, you know, step forward when it came to the production side of this record. And I was happy to do it because, again, it's a thing that I've never been able to do before. Musically, I've never had a producer that had the patience or wanted to dive into doing like a super stacked, you know, 24-part vocal thing in a song. And the producer we had, Tim Pagnotta, was all about it. So we got a chance to do it a few times. It was really fun.
Yeah, we should mention Tim at this stage because I imagine a lot of our audience will know him primarily. I mean, he's the frontman of Sugarcult, you know, brilliant pop punk band from a few years back. And yeah, his influence seemingly all over this record. What was that working experience like, and how did you end up working with him on this record?
You know, it was interesting because when it comes to things like pop punk, like I missed all that stuff. I was never a fan. It never struck a chord. I was, you know, in the early 2000s when that stuff was huge, I was listening to bands like The Killers and Louis XIV and I'm a Robot and Franz Ferdinand and all this, you know, indie hipstery stuff. So the whole Warped Tour and pop punk thing, it never connected with me. It never resonated with me. But he had a lot of success doing that. I think the common ground between us both when it comes to those musical neighborhoods was a foundation of pop music. Both of those genres have that in common. So that's where we started. And he was very, very generous with giving me opportunities to get weird with the musical arrangements and experimenting with weird methods and sounds and stuff, which is another thing that I've never had the opportunity to do before. I've always wanted to, but I found that anytime I've been in a studio, which has only been 2 or 3 times before, it was always very rushed and very focused, and I never really had an opportunity to answer those question marks that were hanging over all of my ideas. And whether they worked or whether they didn't work, Tim encouraged me to chase those. And the ones that did work, we kept. And when they didn't work, at least we got to answer that question, you know? So I don't have to ever wonder, what if we had tried this?
Yeah, I mean, you don't find out until you take a few risks, right? You don't know until you try. And when you've got that opportunity, absolutely milk it. Why not, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I've got a tendency to want to throw everything the kitchen sink into a song when I'm in a studio, because it's such a rare opportunity for me. As long as I've been doing this, like it's only been a handful of times where I've been able to be in a recording studio and have, you know, a unlimited amount of sonic possibilities on hand. So having someone like Tim to be able to rope you in or point you in the right direction when it comes to those weird things was also really helpful too.
Yeah, I can imagine. No, definitely a fruitful collaboration by the sounds of it. Seems to have worked really, really nicely. And speaking of which, let's talk more songs, man. I've got to mention Clusterhug because the journey of that song, man, that is such a fascinating story. Because correct me if I'm wrong, but originally I think you pitched it for Too Weird to Live when you were working on that album. and then you had the Brobecks version, of course, that then came out. And now we've got this new version. I guess my first question is, as great a song as it is, and I really think it's a standout moment in this record, what was it about that for you that meant you wanted to wanted to finally give it its day? Why did it stay with you for this long?
You know, that's sort of something that I've noticed about myself is I can never let something go until it gets a proper chance to be a thing. And that was certainly the case with Clusterhug. You know, I wrote this song and it did end up being too weird to be on Too Weird. So but I loved it so much I couldn't let it go. So I just released the demo that I did as the Brobecks, because that was my only other creative outlet at the time. But even then, you know, it was just like on a Bandcamp site and sat in this weird dark corner of the internet where only a handful of people ever heard it. So to me, it was like this underdog song that never really got its chance to sort of stand center stage and be heard. So when it came time to start collecting ideas, that one never really left me. It was the underdog. And I feel like an underdog myself. So I had to give that song another proper chance.
Yeah, no, I'm glad you did, man. It really, really stands out. I think that's potentially my favorite on the record so far. I really, really love it.
I'm really fond of it too, just for the sake that it sort of, you know, throws those pop music conventions out the window, you know, verse, chorus, bridge, chorus, like that formula that you're supposed to do. Like, we just threw it away completely, and I just wrote whatever felt good, and it did. It still feels good.
Yeah, it does feel good, man. Absolutely. And what an incredibly, incredibly strange coincidence, because I know you will have had those lyrics for a while, but the words "beautiful quarantine" come through quite substantially, don't they? What an incredibly strange coincidence that is.
They hit a little bit differently now. But yeah, that is a coincidence, though. I mean, I certainly, you know, didn't have this in mind when I was writing that song, but now here we are.
Yeah, no, of course, but does it genuinely hit a bit differently? I mean, it must. I mean, you even recorded it presumably before this all hit in. But do you look at it slightly differently now with those lyrics in there?
Yeah, you know, we started recording the record finally in February when Corona started to appear in the news, and I think a few cases in the U.S. And we wrapped up recording just as ideas like lockdowns and quarantines started to appear in the news as well. So I got home, and then we were quarantined, and I had to mix the record via email, which was not ideal. You know, so ideas like quarantining began to, you know, not only change within the context of the song, but we started to incorporate those ideas into some of the visual stuff that we were doing in this record, because I think most artists will try to, you know, reflect the times that they're living in when they make their art, and either react or reflect, I think. And so that's what we're trying to do as well. And the fact that that particular song has quarantine as a lyric, that's purely a coincidence, but moving forward, we're trying to, you know, incorporate and marry those things.
Yeah, it makes sense to do that for sure. But yeah, a strange coincidence, but there we go. It does kick in. Let's talk about, this is another one I definitely want to pick your brain about, Kiss Goodnight, because that to me is very, very interesting in that, you know, you guys have always talked about 1980s, 1970s influences, some throwback influences, but making it modern. That to me is the perfect example of it, because it struck me as having a real modern pop sheen to it, and almost reminiscent of, and I say, by the way, before I say this, massive compliment coming from me because I love her work, touch of the Carly Rae Jepsen's about it, in like that kind of emotion 1980s kind of style to it. But yeah, I'm just curious as how that one came together, really, because yeah, like I say, real modern gloss to it.
I mean, you know, I definitely have an affinity for the stuff that I grew up with, and that struck a chord with me when I was a kid. And it's from, you know, the 70s and 80s have been, you know, probably a bigger influence, at least for this record. But yeah, that song in particular, you know, being I'm not really interested in being a revivalist, you know, as much as I love that stuff, you know. But that song in particular, I think, lives a little bit more in that era than any of the other songs do. Only because I don't know. The subject matter seemed very romantic to me, and when I think romantic, musically, my mind goes to The Cure first, and I think that that's sort of the vibe that I was chasing when we laid that one down. That song in particular is about the night that I met my wife for the first time, and we both really love The Cure, and it's one of those small connections that we share. So chasing that vibe seemed really appropriate for that song.
Yeah, no, you can definitely hear the Cure influence there as well. Certainly the more kind of poppier end of what they do, I would say, it's definitely all over that. And, well, in places in the record, but I guess that one in particular, right? Yeah, makes sense. One more I want to mention that people haven't heard yet, and then we'll get on to loads of other stuff. But I've got to mention Need You Here. Clearly a very, very personal song, and clearly one that, again, I imagine hits rather differently. Subject matter-wise, I mean, your kids are even featured on this track. And as we said before we just started this, it's a very weird situation right now where you are able to actually be at home. And, we've talked, I think in the last time we chatted when you were around here for the UK tour, we were talking about the difficulties that loads of people face in situations like yourself, where you do have to be away from your family a lot of the time in order to pursue this particular line of work. Just talk to me a little bit about actually finally channeling that into the song and actually working with your kids as well.
Yeah, I had this idea for, again, what seemed like forever, at least the beginnings of the idea, for a long, long time. And when my daughter was really, really small, I sat down with her with a microphone and just had a little conversation with her about Dad being on tour. And, ended up getting this really adorable spoken word bit from her when she was really small. And I had the idea forever because every time I seemed to sit down and try to develop it more and try to work on it, that part would come up, and then I would just like bawl like a little girl, and I would just cry, and it was tough for me to get past that point. So I think that one took me probably the longest to write. So by the time that the idea was developed and complete, she had gotten a little bit older, and it happens like that when you're a parent. But I found out just by happenstance that she's a really, really talented singer. It's not a talent that she has ever shared with me before. I just happened to hear her like in her room, like recording a TikTok or something that she was doing, and I'm like, wow, my girl can sing. And so I had talked with her about that, and she was kind of shy about it and not sure if she wanted to for a while. And I didn't push her like at all. I think eventually she came to me and said, yeah, Dad, I think I want to sing this song with you. So this particular song has two periods of her life, the spoken word bit and this other bit that she sings with me on the bridge. And so, yeah, that song is really special. She's the featured artist on the album.
Yeah, absolutely. No, what a lovely thing to be able to do, though. I mean, that's something that you will be able to look back on, and actually having that recorded. That's just such a lovely thing to be able to do, particularly given the actual subject matter of the song. I'd imagine that must be a personal favorite. I know it's hard to pick favorites on the record, but that must hit a special place, right?
Yeah, it's pretty special. I have to admit it's kind of why it took me so long to get through writing it, because I think when you write a song, it's sort of is like a baby bird scenario where you have this little tiny thing that grows, and then eventually you have to be done with it and let it go out into the world. And this particular baby bird was my relationship with my daughter as she's been small and as she's grown and as I've had to be away on tour. So it's pretty special to be able to have done that with her.
Yeah, it's a lovely thing, man. I think a lot of people are going to, again, it's another one that might hit slightly different. I think a lot of people really relate to it in a way, a lot of songs where it's about being away from loved ones. I think a lot of people in that situation right now are by necessity. So it's a lovely thing to be able to hear that from personal experience and all that stuff. Let's talk about something you mentioned briefly earlier about bringing in these ideas of quarantine, this weird time we're in, into some of your visuals and stuff. These music videos, man, talk to me about how practically that works, particularly the Leave Me Alone one, because yeah, it must be a surreal experience to suddenly be on set and have all these extra rules in. How did it practically work for you guys?
I mean, well, practicality was the name of the game, really, because we find ourselves in this weird time of of being able to finally release music and have a quarantine and a pandemic just step on the whole thing. So how do you make music videos promoting your record and have them be visually interesting, but also keep people safe, which is, the priority when we're doing this stuff. So the music video for Leave Me Alone was, again, born out of necessity, having to make a video but not endanger anyone in the process. So we incorporated, things like social distancing and, the face masks and plastic bubbles. And we had a COVID compliance officer on site taking everyone's temperature at the door, and everyone had to get tested beforehand because, as much as I want to make good art, if it comes at the expense of somebody's health, then it's not worth it for me.
Yeah, of course.
So that was the priority, make a video, but everyone has to stay safe first and foremost. So why not incorporate all of the stuff that we need to do into the idea for the music video? And the same thing with the video for Razzmatazz. A lot of people are doing green screen videos now. It seems to be the sort of standard way to film a video and keep people safe. But with that one, we had to put our own little spin on it. So I demanded that I had to kind of put my foot down with the record label and the director and everyone that we film this on VHS cameras only and use only vintage equipment for it, because I think that stuff has a very specific feel to it that you can't really replicate with filters. And I mean, you can, but you can always tell when it's digital, So doing it that way was a lot more work, but I find that when things are, things that are worth it are very rarely ever easy.
Very true. No, very, very true. No, it definitely pulled it off and makes sense. And you say that you're thinking even moving forward with visuals that we presume will be coming and things moving forward as you continue to promote the album, more of that kind of clever ways to get around the situation. Is that what we're thinking?
Well, yeah, I think that's going to have to be the case because, again, keeping each other safe and looking out for each other is far more important to me than, making a music video or, So as important as that stuff is to me, I can't have it come at the expense of anybody's health or livelihood. I just wouldn't be able to. I got to be able to sleep at night,
Oh, absolutely. I think you got to be safe.
But I think that when you do have limitations on what you're able to do creatively, whether those limitations be quarantines or whether they be financial or what you have available to you, when you have those limitations, it forces you to be more creative with what you do have available. A lot of the times artists will just, the answer is to throw money at it. And I've found that that's not always the best way to make something compelling. Throwing money at a video isn't always the answer. Sometimes those limitations and those restrictions and that lack of resources sort of forces you to work harder to be more creative. And I would always rather do that.
Yeah, find those creative solutions. No, absolutely. Makes sense for sure on that one. I want to talk as well then about moving forward. Do you have things lined up that you can tell us about in terms of, there's no touring for the foreseeable, which, we hope comes back sooner rather than later. But in the absence of touring for now, that fan connection, actually connecting with the fans around this release, what have you guys talked about in terms of how that might work in these coming months?
Well, we've been floating the idea. Someone here in Salt Lake City approached us with the idea of doing a socially distanced concert at a local soccer stadium.
Wow.
Downtown. We're not sure if it's going to be able to happen or not, just because plans seem to change day by day. we're all sort of grabbing at straws and trying to figure things out as they're thrown our way. But, if it does happen, then wonderful. If not, we've also been doing things like recording some sets with other live local musicians here in Salt Lake City and Provo, down in some recording studios, and just playing this music with real live musicians rather than just Ryan and I and the tracks that we make. And that's been really fun. We've had some really great local talent. A guy named Robert Loud, who plays guitar and keyboards for the Killers, come join us, and a guy that I co-wrote Sugar Pills with on the record. His name's Stu Maxfield. They're both like really talented super shredders, can like pick up any instrument ever made, and within like a half an hour they'll have it mastered. It's maddening, but
just infuriating. Those guys, just infuriating when you see it.
But being able to play this stuff live with live people is something new that Ryan and I haven't done for a long time. So one have never done with this band. So it's been really fun to be able to do that. So filming that stuff and finding opportunities to either stream it or release it in the future. We've got some stuff in the bank ready to go.
Yeah, that's good to hear, man. And in terms of when live shows do eventually come back, we know they will. We don't know when, of course, but when they do come back, is that something you've already thought about in terms of, do you see yourself expanding the amount of people on stage, or do you see yourself, I guess, also incorporating some of the themes and the mythology, which does get expanded a bit on this record with the interludes and stuff? Do you see how that live show, that next tour, will begin to work in your head?
Yeah, I've thought about it, and adding more live musicians to our stage show is something that we've always talked about and always wanted to do. We've just never been able to, because of practical things like money, for example.
Sure.
But as that begins to change and we have opportunities to bring more people in, we definitely want to, because Ryan and I both love to find moments within our live show to sort of weave in between ideas and improvise and make every night different. And when you're locked into tracks, that can be a challenge. But we try not to lean on those too hard. I mean, when we do play shows, there are moments where we turn the tracks off completely and just do songs between the two of us and the crowd, and try to find those moments to unchain ourselves a little bit,
Yeah, for sure. Now it'd be exciting to see what comes next whenever, we pray it's sooner rather than later, but fingers crossed, man. Fingers crossed there. We need to talk about the term razzmatazz, I feel, because I like to always ask people when it comes to album titles why they chose it, and because I often find it's a bit of a mission statement for bands. And yeah. I think that's never been clearer than with this, really. There's almost a little explanation at the top of the record about the meaning of razzmatazz, really, but I want to know from you, what do you take away from the term razzmatazz, and how does it apply to the work of IDK?
I mean, it is a bit of a story. I mean, I'm only familiar with the word itself because of this music education TV series that would be shown to me and my classmates when I was in elementary school. There was one day of the week where the teacher would wheel in that big TV that was strapped to the cart and pop in a VHS tape of this Canadian public TV show called The Music Machine. And the host of the show, she would always start every episode with asking this giant computer, the Music Machine, to play us some razzmatazz. And so I never forgot that word. And, since we recorded the song and named the album that, I've become more aware of other people using that term as well. Like there's a Pulp song called Razzmatazz that I didn't know about, which surprised me because I'm a huge Jarvis Cocker fan and a Pulp fan as well. And Jamba Juice has a shake called a Razzmatazz, I guess, too. So there's
a prime opportunity. There you go.
Yeah, a prime opportunity for either a cross promotion or a lawsuit. I'm not sure which, but we'll find out. Only time will tell. But Razzmatazz was the last song that we put together on the record, and as I felt like it was a good closing statement for all of the themes that we had talked about. on the record, and it was probably the most exciting idea to me that we had come up with in the process of making this record. So it seemed like the title track.
Yeah, makes sense. No, definitely. I feel like in that, like I just said, about mission statements, it definitely feels like one for you guys. Like, let's hit them with some razzmatazz this time around, right?
But yeah, I mean, I guess the dictionary definition of it is something big and showy that's meant to impress or distract. And isn't that what all of this music business and Hollywood jazz is all about anyway?
Yeah, you just defined rock and roll in a way right there. Yeah, very, very true. Let's look to the future then, because I would imagine, given that you guys have had these songs for a very, very long time, I know you were waiting to record the record and waiting to be able to put it out. Have you got new ideas in the bank? Have you got stuff that you're, again, waiting to kind of hit the ground with at the right time?
Yeah, I've got probably 2 records worth of like beginnings of ideas. I'm starting to collect and I'm starting to work on them now that we're rolling out this record. These other things can have an opportunity to get worked on, but early stages. But there's plenty to work with. I just got to sort through it.
Yeah. Are we playing in the same kind of territory, or are you trying kind of new different styles out? What kind of vibe are you going for this time?
I don't want to say yet. I never want to have to do any one particular thing. There's a really great interview that David Bowie did years ago about that. When you start to get too comfortable within doing one particular thing, if you want to progress as an artist, you have to sort of take another step out into the water, so to where your feet are barely touching the sand anymore, and yeah, we don't ever want to have to get locked into one particular thing, but we'll see. As time progresses, and I'm sure that these ideas will change and evolve, and as Jeff Goldblum say, life finds a way.
It always does. It always does. My glass started shaking when you said that. Let's finish on this then, man, because the fans have been ready for this record. Like I say, there's lots of nice surprises on there. They've only really heard a handful of tracks. It's going to be really, really great when it finally gets out there. They'll be able to hear this in its full state. What do you, as the artist, hope that they take away from this record? What's the takeaway statement for the iDKHOW fans out there?
As much as I would love, I don't know how to be somebody's new favorite thing. I've thought about this question before, and if nothing else is taken away from what we do, I hope at the very bare minimum, we can be a window or doorway that introduces you to your new favorite thing. If we aren't that for you, then I hope that we can introduce you to someone like Sparks or like David Bowie or T-Rex or Oingo Boingo or the Ink Spots or any of this stuff that I love that influences what I write, because I find that I enjoy my favorite things a lot more when I'm able to share them with people. And for me, creating music is sharing my favorite things with people, because I feel like, for better or worse, I wear my influences on my sleeve. And I can't really help myself from doing it that way. And I think it's partly because I want everyone else to love the same things that I love. So if nothing else, I hope that we can introduce you to that stuff.
Yeah, spreading the word, spreading the good word of the good music. There's nothing wrong with that. Yeah, works well. Dallon, really great to chat to you as always, man. And all the best to you, all the best to the family, all the best to Ryan. And we, just look forward to seeing you guys in the UK whenever that's allowed. But in the meantime, stay safe out there, all right?
Well, I appreciate it. And thank you for giving us an opportunity and, chatting with me. And hopefully we can see you soon.
Absolutely, man. All right. Dallon Weekes, everybody.